Hey, how you doing? Thanks for downloading the show. Welcome to Garden Fork Radio. It's Eclectic DIY. I'm your host, Eric. My friend Rick is here. We're going to talk about antidepressants.
and painting your lawn.
Yeah.
And maybe updating your estate plans and wills and that kind of thing. I recently found out that I have now outlived 2 barbers and an attorney. And so I had to get a new attorney. And of course, when he looked at our stuff, he says, "Oh no, this will never do." So anyway, how are you, my friend? It's so good to hear your voice.
I'm good. I'm very excited because I think everyone knows that I have depression, and I've tried different things to keep it tolerable. I don't know if the right word. I don't think you can ever cure it.
Yeah, manageable. Manageable.
Exercise, meditation, eating right. Mm-hmm. And I have tried antidepressants in the past, and I didn't really like how they worked. I used Paxil and I can't remember Lexapro.
Right.
And the biggest thing I didn't like was the weight gain from those. I was like, wow, I'm putting on some weight here. And I basically, I thought, I can self-manage this. And when I exercise, I do feel better, but it's not sustained. It comes back. It's been affecting my work. It's been affecting my home life. It's no fun to be around you haven't seen a cranky Eric, and it is not fun. And there's a group of dogs that play in the park in the morning, and it's kind of funny because 3 of the people with their dogs are therapists. And I asked one of them, I said, "Are there any new antidepressant drugs out there that I could try?" And the therapist friend said, "Well, why are you asking that?" Which is a typical therapy question. So
yeah,
I just, went through, look, I'm depressed more than half the time. I don't get my work done. I have all these videos I need to edit. I can't get over this hump of finishing them. I eat chocolate when I don't feel well. And she said, "Well, you should maybe try Wellbutrin." And I'm like, "Oh, what's that?" She goes, "Well, it's been around for a while, but it sounds like it might work for you. It doesn't have the weight gain, and you don't have to slowly onboard onto it and slowly offboard, if you want to get off of it." And I'm like, okay. So I messaged my primary care doctor, because we have an app now for our doctor's practice, which I love. And she set me up with a prescription to see a psychiatrist. And she said, you can go in network, and here's, this is where to find some psychiatrists. All the psychiatrists were booked. But she gave another option of an online mental health care company, business, basically, which is based in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, which is just north of me here. So I was very intrigued by that. So I signed on with them. They do like an intake and, forms that you fill out, asking you questions. And then they schedule an appointment with me with a nurse practitioner with an online video call. And I just had that call, and it was a lot of fun. Depression can be fun.
Oh boy, yeah.
And it was a 45-minute intake, and I've answered many of the questions before, but they have to ask them, how do you rate, out of a scale of 1 to 10, how do you rate the depression? Do you have suicidal thoughts? Do you have thoughts of acts of violence? Is this run in your family? Do you drink a lot? Do you drink a lot of coffee? Are you allergic to any medications? Have you seen a talk therapist before? And so it was really eye-opening. And I spoke with a nurse practitioner, not a psychiatrist. But the nurse practitioner clearly experienced this, because I've been experienced with talking to healthcare people about depression.
Right.
And it was fantastic. And so now I've got a prescription for Wellbutrin, and I'm going to try that starting tomorrow. And I'm excited. I feel like there might be a way to manage this better than I have been. I still will exercise, I'll still meditate, but when I'm depressed, I stop doing all that.
Right.
With at least with my depression is a very comfortable feeling for me. You just want to stay home and eat donuts and watch Netflix or YouTube. And you're like, I don't really want to exercise. I don't
Oh,
want to,
oh, good God, we're all depressed then.
So I'm telling this because I think there is still stigma attached to mental health, and it affects everything. It affects your marriage. It affects your physical health, and there are solutions out there. And a patron of Garden Fork is a doctor, and I've met her actually in person. She came to New York for a conference, and online we have emailed. And I asked her about all this, and she had some great help, which pushed me toward yes. She was instrumental, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to do another thing. And she's like, well, blah, 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 blah. So she knows who she is, and I just wanted to say a public thank you to her for that. It was so don't if you're not feeling well, there are different ways to deal with that, and I would not be averse to an online video call. Um, and it was really kind of fun. It was kind of like a Zoom call with someone who knew what you were going through and said, "Well, there's a light at the end of the tunnel." So I'm psyched.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I would not shy away from a nurse practitioner or a physician's assistant.
Yeah.
They essentially they're different fields, different but related fields as far as academics. But a nurse practitioner is always an RN who has 4 year degree, and then the practitioner part is a essentially a 2 year master program, and they're in all kinds of fields. I married into a whole nest of medical people when I married in here. It's kind of like marrying into a nest of snakes, but some of them are nurse anesthetists, which are nurses that administer gas and drugs when you have surgeries. Gail is a nurse practitioner.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Some are OB specialists, some are psych specialists, some are. You name a medical specialty. When I had my knees done, there were two physician's assistants in the room, and the doctor would actually do the work on the knee, the actual bone work of grinding and
The
cutting
drilling.
and hammering, drilling, all that carpenter stuff. And then the physician assistants in the room would do the closing work, stitching the muscles and the ligaments and the skin back together.
Oh.
And when I was in recovery, they would both come in and they compare their work.
Ah.
And there was a slight difference in the way they stitched on top, and it was really amazing. But they're highly specialized. They're all, as far as I know, uniformly good and dedicated. And I approve of nurse practitioners and physicians. That a lot of things don't require a a a real, a doctor. In the Navy, we had
Most
independent
mates.
independent duty corpsmen, IDCs, and these are guys that they were medical corpsmen. They were essentially advanced life-saving skills. These are the guys. Corpsmen are the ones that go out with the Marine Corps in the field and are like medics for them. Except in the Navy, we
Oh.
call them, in the Marines, we call them corpsmen. And then an IDC, an independent duty corpsman, has advanced training, and they are essentially put on small, what we call small deck ships, destroyers, frigates, submarines. Lots of times you have independent duty corpsmen on submarines, and they take care of all the day to day issues athlete's foot and sewing, stitching up wounds when you're injured doing work. And I found that independent duty corpsmen are just amazing people. And so, in fact, there was a case not that long ago where there was a ship in a very remote part of the ocean, and they are not a ship, a submarine. And one of the patients or one of the seamen had a bad case of appendicitis. They couldn't cool it down with drugs, is
Hmm.
normally what you try to do first. You suppress it with drugs, you cold compresses, you get them to a port, and then you take care of it there. And because of video conferencing, a surgeon talked the independent duty corpsman through doing an appendectomy, doing surgery and taking that appendix out.
Wow.
And so it's always an amazing thing. But yeah, there are lots of people that have amazing skills, and they specialize in just one thing, and they're very good at that one thing.
So there's, in other words, there are people that are not an MD, have not done the 6 year, I think it's 6 years of school and interning and this and that, and yet they have these skills and they can write prescriptions and referrals and things.
Right.
And it can be an NP or a PA, usually after the person's name.
Right, and there are limits. I mean, they take care of of athlete's foot. They write you a prescription for the right stuff, or mild first time they see you throat or chest issues. If you come back after that, then you're probably going to see a doctor, and sometimes you get referred on to a specialist anyway. But the truth is, in about 80%, maybe 90% of the cases in medicine, if you wait, things get better. The body has an amazing ability, at least in a normally healthy person, the body has an amazing ability to heal itself. And so, sometimes all you need is treat the symptoms and wait for nature to take its course. And that's pretty amazing. I actually taught courses in the military has a its own medical school. There are no military doctors, regardless of what some people say. All doctors are. They may do their basic medical training, just slides and anatomy and physiology, that kind of thing, in the military medical school, which is called USHIS.
Hmm.
It's up in Bethesda, Maryland, at Bethesda Naval Hospital. Well, it's Walter Reed Army Hospital now. But then they actually train the U.S. government trains almost every doctor in the United States, I think, because they enter into reserve programs or active duty programs where the government and the military pay for their education in great part. But they work in all these other hospitals and do their residency and internships and all that in all these different hospitals. And so I forget where I was going with that. Oh yeah, I taught I teach a class and not on medicine, on actually it was CACO, casualty assistance, when a service member dies, how that works in the military. And one thing I learned in teaching these classes that medicine is essentially you have a disease on a note card, and you have three symptoms and maybe two things to try. And if those don't work, there's a third thing to try. And you just memorize all that because the symptoms and just for basic medicine, that's kind of how it goes. You if you have these three things, then there's a 99% chance, and it's all probabilities. There's a 99% chance it's X or Y. Now, probably some doctor's going to come after me, but
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, that really
I
is
know
kind of
which one it is.
yeah. Uh, in a for basic medicine, that's the kind of how it works for most things. And then you get into the level of the diagnostician and the differential diagnoses. And that's where it's really complicated. This is the kind of stuff you'd see on House. Remember the TV series House?
Right.
He was this high-powered diagnostician, and of course, Hugh Grant was none of those things. But all the writers and advisors to the series were, and so they picked out these peculiar cases and that were difficult and convoluted and twisted and whatnot, and they made a story out of it. Same thing happened on MASH, actually.
Yeah, they had advisors to talk about what
really happened, what it was really like in the 1950s. Medicine in the 1950s was actually like, and what you would do and what you wouldn't do. But at the very basic level, a lot of medicine is relatively simple in some ways. So, but yeah. Anyway, I love nurse practitioners, and I love PAs, and I love doctors. God knows I've seen enough of them lately.
I always try and I make myself be in a good mood and engaging, because I imagine they all see some pretty whiny people. Friend of mine is a primary care physician, and I mean, he can't divulge names or anything, but he says so many people come into my office thinking they can just take a pill to solve whatever. And a lot of it is lifestyle things. And if they would just cut down on the calorie intake or the alcohol intake or the cigarette intake or the caffeine intake, that would go a long way towards, but they just think they can keep living a lifestyle that is not great for your health, but a pill will solve it all. So,
well, and then you get to you get yourself into the corner, and it's like Mark Twain said, he never gave up tobacco or whatever, because when he got sick, he wanted to have something to throw overboard, at the end to make himself better. And that's kind of the way a lot of people live lives. They just say, well, when I get really sick, I'll stop drinking, or I'll stop smoking, or stop drinking and smoking. And, by then, that's not the way physiology works. Once a process begins, it's very difficult to reverse it.
My father was lying on the floor of the entry hallway of the hospital, and they were about to apply the electric paddles on him. Uh-huh. And that's when he decided to stop smoking. He was having a heart attack, and he walked in the front door of the hospital and said, I'm having some chest pain. And they laid him down. And they went, ka-chunk.
Gail did ICU work, and
which is an incredibly hard thing to do.
Yeah. And, it's people that are, and she has stories of these amazing saves they made where people walked out after 3 months, and you're like, my God, they couldn't, how could they possibly walk out with all that going on? But, there are a lot of, kind of conversions that happen there at the last minute. You say, gee, I think I'll start trying to live a better life. And sometimes it doesn't work out that way.
Wow. That was Eric and Rick medical talk. But
and neither of us are medical people, so
No, but
take it for what it's worth.
I'm a patient of life. So if you are not feeling well, there are a number of tests for depression. Do not go to some clickbaity site. If you go to, I know NYU has an online depression. I would be willing to bet that the Mayo Clinic has an online depression test. You can, I'm sure, through your medical doctor, find someone or something like that as well. But there are ways to, I don't know about cure it, but there are ways to manage it. And I just decided I was tired of being unhappy. I was worried about, being it's no fun to be around someone that's depressed, especially if they're your spouse. And
it's the reason you don't have any friends, Eric.
I still have a lot I want to finish in life. I want to still change lives through videos and podcasts. I want to get people to realize that they're capable of so many things. And so I kind of had to put my money where my mouth is and like, okay, well, it's time to deal with this depression thing and stop eating bagels and chocolate.
Well, I eat a lot of dark chocolate in the morning. I have a square or two of Ghirardelli's super dark chocolate. What's it, 92% or something?
Right,
And it's medicinal. It's like coffee. It's medicinal. It's not for pleasure at all.
right. My problem is I'll eat the whole bar.
Ooh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That might be an issue.
Yes, well, that's why I went to my healthcare professional.
Yeah, one of the things that's helping me a lot, I've gotten really interested the last little bit. Oh, by the way, you were talking about different sites to go to.
Yeah,
Yeah, do yourself a favor. Cleveland Clinic, Mayo, Johns Hopkins, all these places have wonderful resources
they do.
online. If you don't recognize the name as a quality medical institution, there are no secrets in medicine. There's no secret cure that's being kept from the public.
Do this one thing to treat your blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, go to a quality site. I believe in science. I believe in the scientific method. Yes, there have been problems. There will always be problems in anything that's human, and things change. If people, one of the things that drove me crazy during the COVID was people saying, "Well, but they keep changing the rules and changing what they think." I said, "Well, that's science.
Yeah.
If you're looking for a single guiding star for the rest of your life, you're looking for religion. You're not looking at science." And so, do yourself a favor and do that.
Wow, that
Now,
could be your new podcast. I have this running joke. What do you call three guys in a room?
I don't know.
A podcast.
Uh
That's
That's
all
just
they
two.
are.
Yeah, just two guys in a room. Yeah,
Two guys, two or three guys that think they're funny, you know? And they're
yeah.
not. All right. So,
Oh, I did. I knew. I remember where I was going with this.
oh, darn.
I have. Yeah, I know. I have become really interested in fermentation and gut biome and that kind of thing, and I think it's actually improved my mood a lot. I do my own yogurt. I do it in quart jars, and I don't use store bought yogurt as a starter. I go online and buy, sometimes it's a Bulgarian, sometimes it's a Hungarian mix, just different versions of yogurt to have. And I have a sous vide cooker, and I don't sous vide anything except yogurt now. But I use it to heat for 8 hours in a bath of water on the stove, and I can do 2 quarts at a time. So I've got good quality yogurt there, and I have started fermenting everything. Veg-
Carrots?
Carrots. I do a lot of sauerkraut. Make my own sauerkraut. Have a little bit every morning, just a little bit, with my yogurt and some oatmeal, dry oatmeal on top of it. And I think it's improved my weight, that's for sure. But I think it's actually improved my mood as well.
Wow. This is just like the uplifting podcast here.
Yeah. Well, and so people say, "Oh, yeah, sauerkraut's too salty." And the secret to doing your own sauerkraut and not making it salty, the salt, lactobacillus bacillus, is salt resistant. So it grows in the presence of salt. That's the reason they salt food until the lactobacillus begins to multiply and protect your food. Well, if you use the juice as a starter from your last sauerkraut, you can use a lot less salt because you don't have that in between period where the salt's protecting your food, keeping it from spoiling, and then the lactobacillus takes over. And so I save all the juice from our last sauerkraut and reuse a lot of it, so that it shortens that period where the food's liable to spoil because of access to the air and that type of thing.
Wow, you could maybe you could like freeze dry that and sell it. Rick's Kraut.
Yeah, Rick's Kraut. And it's amazing. Yeah, I make salsa sauerkraut or salsa ferment, and it is wonderful. Cilantro and peppers and tomatoes and some jalapenos and onion, and I'll make big quarts of it and put it in the refrigerator. Uh, they make little airlocks like for your brewing
Yep.
that go on top of quart jars, and they're little silicone deals, and it'll pop off the air when the bacillus is beginning to really multiply, and then when that happens, then you put it in the refrigerator and you just have salsa with maybe some chips or some celery or something. It's wonderful
Celery.
stuff. Well, celery is a good medium for getting anything into your mouth. Celery's great to carry
Peanut
peanut
butter.
butter into your mouth.
Yeah, I love that. Jar of peanut butter. That'll cure my depression.
Yeah, well.
Hey, real quick, one easy way to support Garden Fork is if you're going to shop online and use Amazon, please use the link to our storefront. The link is in the show notes here. If you click on that, it'll open it up in your web browser. If you're on a laptop or desktop, it will open it up into your app, ideally if you're using the Amazon mobile app. Please shop locally. I go to my local hardware store first. If I can't find it there, then I go to the orange or blue store. If I can't find it there, then I order it online. So if you are shopping online, use our Amazon link, amazon.com/shop/gardenfork. The link is also in the show notes. Thank you.
Well, what else do we have to talk about? We have beat this horse to death.
Painting your grass.
I don't understand this, but
This is an article I think we both ran across on the same website because you turned me onto this website a long time ago. And it's a great website. You want to tell us about it?
sure. It's called theconversation.com. And the conceit of this website, this organization really, is they take high-end medical or high-end scientific topics and they explain them in layman terms. And it's a lively writing style. It's not full of jargon. It's not loaded up with lots of links and stuff. But they explain things. I just ran across it on Reddit recently. ELI5. Explain like I'm five is that acronym. And that's what they kind of do, and it's very accessible. It's high quality, and they cover a range of topics. And this is just their latest one: why more and more Americans are painting their lawns.
Painting it green.
Well, and why green? If you're gonna paint, you might as well go with something colorful.
There are different shades of green that you can buy, like Fairway and Perennial Rye.
Yeah,
This is kind of funny because when I worked in the film world, there were, depending on the location, they were either set decorators or there were actually crew. A crew was called the Greens crew. Someone that's worked in the world is yelling back at the podcast, but they're essentially landscapers for film shoots. And they would have pump-up sprayers with a green water-based dye, and they would dye the front yard of where we were shooting, for a commercial or whatever. And it just seemed very normal to me. And now realizing this article, I'm like, oh, this is not normal.
What the article is really talking about, though, is how, one, the history of it, and this all goes back to the Levitt towns, the Levitt family
In Long Island.
in Long Island built 17,000 homes between 47 and 1951. and they were made for veterans, small starter homes that people would move into, and they were using the GI Bill to buy these homes and that kind of stuff. And they made every home have its own lawn and actually dictated that everyone had to mow the lawn at least once a week during the season, which is kind of strange. But and so that's how the lawn really got started. And then we, or in the United States at least, and then we started bringing the outdoors indoors by having sliding glass doors and patios, and so you wanted to be able to look out on something very pleasant and green and peaceful, and that became part of your yard. Instead of having a very big room you lived in, you would during temperate times open the doors and windows and have the indoors outdoors and the outdoors indoors, whatever. How I messed that up, didn't I?
Anyway, you want to look out your backyard window there and look at a nice green yard.
How'd you say that so well?
Because I'm Eric.
Yeah, okay. But then I didn't realize this part of it. The Scots people got involved.
Oh yeah.
Scots fertilizer, and they started importing grasses that were not native to America, and so these grasses needed a lot of support, and so this whole industry started up of people supplying weeds and feed and chemicals and all kinds of stuff for your lawn because it's not native, which then began to choke out the clover. Which I love clover in a yard. I think it's an indication of the quality of the yard when you see clover.
Yeah, so it basically became yards became a chemical yard, to the point that the herbicides they were usually using back in the day were not that healthy to you.
Yeah.
But then it says here that even in 1964, green grass paint was being sold in 35 states.
I did not know that.
I didn't know that either. So, I mean, I know people do it now because of the droughts, but I was kind of blown away. What I don't understand is there are a kind of grass called zoysia grass,
Yes.
Zoysia, which is used on golf courses. I was a golf caddy in high school. And
I didn't know that.
yeah, I bought my first Volkswagen with that money. And when it gets cold, it turns brown, and then as it warms up in the spring, it turns green again. And so there were whole yards in our neighborhood that were brown when it was cold, and I'm like, oh, they must have the zoysia grass, but the stuff is bulletproof once it's grown. So I wonder if people that had zoysia were painting it green, or it just boggles my mind that people would paint their yard. I actually like clover, and I have spread clover seed in my yard.
Right.
I'm not big on grass. It's kind of, the irony is there's a weed I hate. It's called ground plantain. There's a very wide leaf.
Oh yeah.
And it kills the grass and the clover.
But they're edible.
When they're young, they're edible. Yes.
Yeah.
And and honeybees love the flower, and the flower is this brown, ugly thing that sticks up, but it's weird.
Yeah. Yeah. I would go for an all natural yard. Actually, I would prefer just a little. Now at my stage of life, I would prefer just a small garden home with just a tiny patch of grass in the front, a tiny patch of grass in the back for the dogs to go.
Yeah.
And have nice plantings and lots of foliage around instead of just grass.
I like the last paragraph. Together, the return of grass painting with the resurgent interest in clover lawns suggests that the ideal of a resource-intensive perfect lawn is an ecological conceit that the country may no longer be able to afford. So,
yeah. Our problem here, we're tabletop flat, and so it's difficult to channel water, rainwater, storm water, that kind of thing. And our I took a Master Gardener's class. I am a Virginia Master Gardener.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and
So,
the
so
one,
it's to say MG after your name. It's like Rick,
yeah,
podcast
yeah,
host MG.
yeah, something like that. But the one thing I learned is that homeowners are incapable of applying chemicals
Yes.
in a logical in the proper fashion, not logical, in a proper fashion. They don't mix very well. They over apply. They apply too many times, in a season, wanting to get that perfectly green grass. And,
Right.
and the more stuff you put on it, the faster it grows and the greener it is. And so that must be better. And then all that excess, which the plant just rejects because it cannot use anymore, it washes down into our sewer systems. And we have a flood water system here. Some places combine sewer and flood. This is just a flood water drain, storm drain system. And then it flushes right out into the Chesapeake
River,
Bay.
ocean. Yeah.
Yeah, Chesapeake Bay. And there are enormous kills. When you look at the satellites of the northern Chesapeake Bay satellite images, you can see the brown kill zone flowing out of the I forget what river that is up there in Delaware, and
Yep.
it's all the chemicals washing into the bay and creating these dead zones.
There is a corn-based weed suppressant, I think it would be called,
Mm-hmm.
because grass and clover are a perennial and most weeds are annuals. And so there is a corn gluten-based powder, or it can be in a liquid, I think, that you can apply to your lawn in the early spring or in the fall, where it will suppress the germination of annual seeds. And it takes a couple years to do it, but it can rid your lawn of a lot of seed annual based so-called weeds. I thought
Right.
that was interesting. I'd be curious about that if I could get rid of the ground plantain. For
Yeah.
some reason, I do not like ground plantain. I just,
Well, the problem is though it prevents the clover from germinating
oh,
because
uh-oh.
it's a pre-emergent. It prevents germination.
Yes.
And so
Oh,
then you get rid of the clover. I mean, it's one of those damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of things. But the problem is not tolerating a diversity of plants in your yard. I have some zoystra in my yard. I've got a lot of Bermuda. I've got a lot of. We put in winter rye over the winter just to give it a nice green color, and it's beginning to die back now. And the fescue is taking over. And between that and I've got some beautiful dandelions that are sticking their yellow heads up.
oh yeah.
I'm quite glad to have them. And then the clover's coming back in a couple of areas. So I like a lot of diversity in my yard. And if you mow it down, it's all green.
Well, that was quite the show.
Yeah, yeah, we covered a lot of territory.
From
It's
antidepressants to painting your lawn green. There's a
well,
there's a there's a what's it called? There's a connection there.
Oh, I think so. Yeah, I was just going to say that. Only depressed people paint their lawns green.
All right. If you want to hear what we're going to talk about in the after show, you can become a supporter of Garden Fork. A cup of coffee a week, and you get the after show. It's photos of the dogs, and now access to our group discussion board, which is based on a app called Discord. That's just starting up. But the after show this week, we're going to be talking about my quest to buy a pre-hung, pre-primed, single door French door, and
Oh wow!
it's amazing how long that took to accomplish. All right, if you have some thoughts about either of these subjects, it's radio@gardenfork.tv. If you are a subject matter expert and perhaps would consider being on the show and talk about some of these, maybe we could do that as well. It's radio@gardenfork.tv. Thanks for listening. Go out and do cool stuff and make it a great day.
Talk to you later, my friend. We'll see you.
Garden Fork Radio is produced by Garden Fork Media LLC in Brooklyn, New York. Our executive producer is Jimmy Goose. For more information about Jimmy and the custom hollow books he makes, visit hollowbooks.com. The music in the show is licensed from audioblocks.com and uniquetracks.com.